What is going on, friendlies? It's been a while since I posted a new video for Friendly Fire Gaming, but today I am here with a video response for my friend Alex over at the Turbozone. He did a top 10 video and tagged some people to see what their top 10s are. He wants to know what are my favorite top 10 wrestling games of all time. So throw on your tights, strap on your boots, and let's get oiled up for some wrestling talk. Hold on a minute, I'm getting a call. Okay, so I've just been told the question's actually what are my favorite games of all time. I was wondering why Alex wanted some wrestling recommendations. So first off, I need to tag some people to do the challenge as well. So I want to tag my friend who I share this channel with, David. And I'm not sure if this guy's been tagged already or not, or if he's already done it, but Black Metal Gamer. Okay, so this was really hard for me. I was constantly adding games and removing games from my list. At one time I had like 18 games on the list and quickly realized that I don't even know how to count. But I got it down to 10, and I think I'm going to stick with it. Now, I'm not saying these are objectively better than anyone else's list or anything like that. Hell, if you asked me the same question on another day, I'd probably have different lists for you. I'm just saying these were games that were special to me and the time that I played them. I also didn't put them in order because that's another bag of worms that I'd rather not even open. So first up, as you can see, we have Streets of Rage 2 for the Sega Genesis. Now when I was younger, I didn't really get to dive into gaming until the PS1 and N64 era when I moved in with my mom. But before that, we had a Sega Genesis that we got to play it every now and then. I remember we had Toy Story, Sonic Spinball, X-Men, and Streets of Rage 2. My brothers and I would always play Streets of Rage 2. Hell, it was probably the only time we even got along. Every time we would make it to another level, fight a new enemy, or defeat a new boss, we would feel like we were on top of the world. This is why Streets of Rage made the cut for my top 10. Next up on my list, we have Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Now this could have just as easily been GTA 3 or San Andreas. These early GTA games blew you away when they came out with the stories and the worlds they had created. When we got GTA 3, I couldn't believe all the things the game allowed you to do. My friends and I would sit for hours taking turns doing crazy stuff and getting mad when the other person would, pick up a star to lose the cops. These games gave you the feeling of, man, look what video games can really do. They really set the standard for open world games. The reason I'm going with Vice City though was because of the time and the setting that the game took place. The story, the music really set this game up there for me. I'm a sucker for mob movies, and Ray Liotta doing Tommy's voice was perfect. So I wanted to add a fighting game to my list. I've always been a fighting game fan, games like Soul Calibur, King of Fighters, Guilty Gear, Tekken, and all the crossover games like Marvel vs. Capcom and Capcom vs. SNK consumed my time when I was younger. After doing some soul searching, I decided to add Mortal Kombat 9 to my list. Mortal Kombat 9 did some great things for fighting games, like the big cinematic story mode that other fighting games have tried to replicate ever since. I've always been a fan of the Mortal Kombat games, even the PS2 games where they experimented with ideas that didn't really connect with most fans. When Mortal Kombat 9 came out, I was at the midnight launch to pick up my collector's edition. Yes, that's collector's with a K. I was also getting my copy of SOCOM 4 with the Move controllers. Right after these came out, the PlayStation Network went down for like a month, so there wasn't much to do with SOCOM at the time. But while I was at the game store for the launch, they were doing a drawing to win a free copy of Mortal Kombat 9. I ended up winning the drawing, which is the only time I believe I've ever won any kind of drawing. I ended up giving my free copy to another friend. Mortal Kombat 9 is still my favorite Mortal Kombat game. You should check it out if you haven't. Actually, just play more fighting games and the world will thank you for it. Okay, so the next game I want to throw on my list is The Witcher 3. Now, I had no expectations when I picked up The Witcher 3 since I had never played the first game and couldn't really get into the second game. But oh my god, this game was good. So my first thoughts playing this game was this is a beautiful game, but man, I do not like the combat. but after a while I got used to the combat. The reason I really loved The Witcher 3 was the characters you meet and the side quests. I don't think I ever played a game where the side quests had so much effect on the main story and world you were in. It varied from small things like buying a man a drink and then he helps you get into a castle later, or freeing a ghost only to find later that she kills a whole town full of people. And it's not just the side quests either. Some of the main story quests had me questioning my reasons for the decisions that I had made or was about to make. Several times I would sit and wonder if I should reload an older save because I didn't feel right about the choices I had made. Although the combat still isn't great, I do feel this is a game everyone should experience. Next we have a game that was my first go at competitive multiplayer shooters. The game that I'm talking about is GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64. My friends and I would get together after school and play this with the kids that lived on the street. It was a great first-person shooter with a decent campaign, but where it shined the most was the four-player split-screen mayhem. This game paved the way for the first-person shooter games like Perfect Dark and even Halo. We even played this at a convention a few years ago, and although at first it was hard getting back into the controls, after about 5 minutes we were aiming and strafing like we were teenagers again. Also, Pierce, you will always be my James Bond. I want to show some love to RPGs. Although I know we don't do a lot of traditional RPG stuff on our channel, we do love them and we play them all the time. So I am going to throw The Legend of Dragoon on my list. This game was one of the first RPGs that I was able to really sink my teeth into, and although it had a lot of Final Fantasy similarities, this game did some great things to stand out on its own. The combat was one of the first things that stood out to me. They tried to spice up the turn-based combat with combos that you could do by hitting specific buttons at the correct times for extra damage. After a while you were able to transform into your Dragoon form and do massive damage with magic and special attacks. This game had a simple story at first, just a man trying to save a girl. Or at least that's the start of your journey that'll see you fighting to stop the god of destruction. I know some people might not rank The Legend of Dragoon so high on their lists, but this was my first RPG where I was able to dive into and take my time with. So it will always have a special place in my childhood. So next up, I wanted to put a Resident Evil game on my list, and I was going to go with Resident Evil 2, but after a lot of thought, and as much as it pains me to say this, I'm going to go with Resident Evil 4. Now, Resident Evil 2 was an amazing game that scared the shit out of me when I was younger, mostly because of the tank controls making it hard to avoid enemies, and the enemies being right outside the camera angle view. But Resident Evil 4 was a whole new breed of awesomeness. From the moment you enter the first village, to the moment the first chainsaw wielding, bag wearing man attacked you, to the cool knife fights with Krauser. This game was perfect. Although Resident Evil 4 was the catalyst for the downfalls that were Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, it was the perfect blend of survival horror and action. Also, it still holds up great today.
I'm American.
Next up, we have Fallout New Vegas. When Fallout 3 came out, I wasn't sure what the game was about, and I didn't have anything to play at the time, and it was getting great reviews, so I decided to buy it. Man, was I glad that I did. Fallout 3 was an amazing post-apocalyptic open-world RPG with dialogue choices that affect the story and how NPCs view you. It was everything I wanted. But New Vegas was even better. In Fallout 3, the world was dark, dead, and sometimes just looked green. But Obsidian decided New Vegas was going to go and be colorful and full of life. So when this game came out, I took my vacation just to play it. Early on in the game, you're told you need to get to this big city that's across the map. So I decided that I was just going to explore the whole map before I go to this city for my main objective. On my last vacation day, for whatever reason, I decided to start a new game and accidentally saved over my 96 hours saved that I had worked my entire vacation on. I was so devastated that I didn't come back to the game for at least a month. But eventually, I came back and finished the game. Ever since then, if a game has a manual save option, I always save multiple saves. Of course, it wouldn't be my top 10 without some wrestling games. Anyone who knows me knows that I've been playing wrestling games since I was a wee little lad. Wrestling games are the main reason I wanted a Nintendo 64. The pinnacle for wrestling games was the Aki games like WrestleMania 2000, WCW Revenge, World Tour, Versus the World. Hell, Aki even did the Def Jam games. I don't care for rap and I still had fun with those. Now, I'm not one of those people who think wrestling games were trash after the N64. Actually, there were a lot of great wrestling games after that generation. Games like Here Comes the Pain, Fire Pro Returns, All Stars, and even some newer games like 2K19 were good. But the game going on my list, of course, is WWF No Mercy. It had Aki's perfect gameplay with fun modes, a great roster, awesome branching story mode, and great character creator. I still pop this game in till this day, and it will always be in my top 10. Funny story, my mom bought me my Nintendo 64. I wanted WrestleMania 2000. She got me WCW Mayhem. I also wanted Spider-Man, but she got me Superman 64, because she said the guy at the counter said it was a hot new game. What an ass he must have been. At least she tried, though. And last but certainly not least, every time I think of my favorite games of all time, this game is always at the top of the list. Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, I had to struggle because I wanted to also throw Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 on the list. These games were unbelievable, but Metal Gear Solid 3 is my favorite Metal Gear Solid game. This game had everything: an amazing story, excellent locations, great music, that although I'm not my jam, it still fit the game perfectly, and the best cast of bad guys from any game. The one thing the first three games were excellent for was the cast of villains you face. The Boss, the Fear, the Sorrow, Vulcan, and the best one, Revolver Ocelot. Revolver Ocelot from Metal Gear Solid 3 is probably one of my favorite characters of all time. In 3, Ocelot was a young, arrogant guy with lots of talent but would constantly mess things up because he was always in over his head. Growing up, I really related to this character. The game features some great level design, from the jungle to some desert areas to some facilities. Like I said, I'm not really into the music that's in this game, but it set the mood for the game perfectly. Every time I hear the James Bond style theme while he climbs the never-ending ladder, it still gives me goosebumps. This game had some of the most memorable boss fights from any game, like the sniper fight with the End, and the River of Death with the Sorrow. Hell, going through the River of Death on my first playthrough was a nightmare because I killed everything that moved. That was my top 10 games of all time as of right now. Check back later to see if this list changes. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.